I'm Alice Allen. I'm the Deputy Manager at North Shropshire Homecare. So there's quite a few reasons why we wanted to use GP Connect. The biggest one for us really was just for time management. We had, on average, every day about maybe 3 hours of just waiting on the phones, trying to get hold of GPs, trying to get hold of nurses, trying to get hold of families to see what had happened between conversations between our clients and their medical professionals, because they might not always remember it, or they might have misunderstood information. So the biggest one was really time. Other reasons just sort of it just made a bit more of a it made care planning a lot easier. We'd have it where we go to a client for an initial assessment and we say to them, what sort of medical conditions do you have? And they'll say, nothing, I'm fit as a fiddle, absolutely fine. And then we'll say, okay, what medication you're on? And they are on 10 different medications. They don't tend to be on 10 medications if they've got no medical conditions. So it just sort of made it a lot easier to identify medical conditions we should be aware of that maybe they've forgotten about or they're not even aware of for whatever reason. So yeah, there's a few reasons, but those two are definitely the main ones. So for us, GP Connect has just made time so much quicker to get things answered. We've also had situations where we've rang up GPs and the receptionists have said, this person's not on this medication when we've tried to query it. And then we'll say, well, actually, we can see what's listed there. It is on acute. And then they go, oh, yeah, it is there. So it also saves time in that aspect of if there's a little error made somewhere, we can actually say, no, this is how it is, or this is what's listed, and sort of have a better conversation with them rather than a bit of umming and ahhing and no one quite getting all the information right. We've also had it where, the carers have been in and they've noticed that obviously someone's been there, whether that be a nurse or a GP, and the client can't actually remember what's been said. So then, because the carer's been able to see something, we can just look on GP Connect and it will show that last visit of that day and what was said and what the decision was. So then we don't have to try and ring up nurses and doctors. So the biggest thing really is time. The service users definitely, it's benefited the most in them not having to feel like they have to try and remember everything. And families as well will sometimes have it where the families have been and they know, their family member is saying, the client's saying, I've had a random man in my house today, and they can tell that it's probably a nurse or a doctor and they don't know what's going on as well. So it's helped our clients get sort of the most up-to-date information for their medical records accessed by us, which means then we can deliver a better care really. So we're more up-to-date, we're more correct in what we're saying, so that means that the care that we're providing is effective, and at the end of the day that's just what the client needs.
Go for it.
One of the parts of GP Connect, one of the sections talks about allergies and adverse reactions, and what's another great thing that we found is that we'll ask people, have you got any allergies to food, medication, things like that, and clients will say no, or they might mention one medication, and then when you actually look on their GP Connect, there's like 5 different medications that they're allergic to. And we've also had clients also say that they are allergic to things that they're actually not allergic to because they don't want to use it, which is fine too, but it's just knowing the difference between what is and isn't an allergy, because it's quite important for the care that we provide for someone. So for us, the thing that's really helped with us saving time is we can put more time into actually communicating with our team, making sure that everybody's on board and on the same page. So if there are changes, medication or treatment-wise to a client, we can get that through a lot quicker and not have to wait 4 or 5 hours for a doctor to call back to then start a medication or remove a medication. As well as that, it just means that we have more time to do things like care planning, more time to have staff meetings, one-to-ones and supervision, so we're working a lot better together. More time to speak to the family. Our communication's definitely gone up with the family a lot more because we're able to give them that accurate information, and I think it makes us sound a lot more sort of in the know and professional. We know what we're doing, and it gives that reassurance as well to clients and families that actually, you know, this is a company that really knows what they're doing. They know how to, you know, spot if something's wrong, if something's changed, and they act on it very quickly. I think I said it was a godsend because it's you know, we thought originally it would be, you know, we'd have we'd just see what people have had changes, we'd see what medication they're on, but there's loads of other things that have just come up that we didn't expect. So like we had one scenario where this lady had come home from a care home, and we don't really deal with people coming from a care home often. They come from hospitals normally, or they're privately referred, and because the paperwork hadn't been done to transfer her back to her original GP, because they switched it to the GP closest to where she was at the care home, the GP Connect actually identified that because it was saying that the details that we put in for her GP were different to the ones they've got listed. So then we were able to figure out that actually that hadn't been done, and we were able to do that rather than wait, you know, for the first 3 weeks of her having the medication she came home with, trying to reorder it. Then that, you know, GP actually saying, well, it's not with us, it's with another GP. Do you know what I mean? Like it just saved all that bother. But that's not something that we expected for GP Connect to help with. So there's always like little things that do help as well that you just don't realise you need. So yeah. Yeah, it says the records that you've got don't match the records that we've got, and it'll tell you what the difference one is. So I think for us it said, you know, GP listed here is actually this GP. So starting and setting up GP Connect was actually really, really easy. We already had some of the prerequisites, so we had already got standards met on the DSPT, which we do every year and just renew that. The other thing that we had to do is we had to just sign on the NDSA, just an agreement there, which took about 2 minutes, and then we sent all that to the support team at CareLineLive, and then they organised a meeting with us. They set us up, and yeah, it was pretty. It happened within 24 hours. Really, we were really surprised. So yeah, it was really straightforward. Getting the authorisation from the service users was actually really easy again. We just had to make sure that we had, you know, like a consent form that we made up, and the consent form basically explained what GP Connect was for. So it explained how, you know, we're only using data that's relevant to you now, so things that had happened years ago that aren't relevant now, we wouldn't be knowing, and we wouldn't be knowing the full sort of history of every visit you ever had with a GP professional. So I think once we, you know, obviously stated that any worries that people might have had, that this is the only information we need and why we need it, a lot of them were pretty much happy to sign. There are a few that aren't, and that's totally fine, but it was just a case of making sure that they understood, they signed, and then we uploaded their consent form to CareLineLive, which again, very, very easy to do. Yeah, so now when we start taking people on, you know, we do the initial assessment. We used to just have the usual consent forms of consenting to care, data protection, social media, or any media in that fact, photography and videos. But now we also add the GP Connect form as another form for them to sign. And a lot of the stuff we get back now when we show this form, because obviously family will be present, they'll say that's really good that you've got that and you can access that, because it will save me a lot of bother trying to, you know, call up and chase up things. So yeah, it's just we add it to our sort of initial assessment now, and it just adds that extra bit of information. It means that we don't always have to, if we've not got a lot of time to be with someone to gather all that information, we know that in terms of the medical side and medication side, we can look at that when we come back to the office. So when we're there, we can look at the environment, we can look at the person, and just make it a bit more person-centred and focus on them as an individual rather than what medical conditions have you got and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it really helps with the onboarding of a new client as well. It takes a lot of the work out because it's automatically pulled through. Yeah, I think the clients were very much worried about, you know, sort of things that might be considered embarrassing to some people that might have happened 20 years ago. And again, we don't see any of that unless it's relevant to today. You know, if it's something like massive trauma that might be something that affects their mental health, that's the only things really that we've noticed that we see that are long term. The rest of things like, you know, hip replacements, knee replacements, amputations, those sorts of things that obviously happened so long ago, but they have an impact now on that person. No, not at all. I think maybe because the process in which you gain consent, or the way that it's sorted on CareLineLive is you have to get that consent form. It has to be signed by the service user, and it has to be uploaded. If you can't upload that, then you can't access GP Connect. And you know, it's sort of like a little safeguard in that sense that, you know, not just anyone can access it, and you also have to, when you're signing on and putting that consent form on, you have to say who's uploaded that, who's helped in that decision making. So, you know, there's quite a few things that sort of protect someone from their information being used. As well as that, though, I guess if you know your team and you know that you've got reliable, trustworthy people, it shouldn't really be that worrying to you. You should only really allow those to access GP Connect on CareLineLive through the permissions that you feel you can trust in those situations.